All right. So this is English 1, and we are here to talk about a few things that are going to help you better understand and get comfortable with the story that we are about to start, which is John Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men. To start off, we're going to break down who the author is because a lot of times authors will pour their heart, their soul, their memory, their experience into the work that they write. Out of Mice and Men is one of those stories where you can see elements of John Steinbeck's life. So the important stuff. John Steinbeck, he was born February 27th, 1902, not too far from where we're at right now in Salinas, California. Those were rougher times, and during summers, even as a kid, even as a teenager, Steinbeck needed to work at nearby ranches as a hired hand, which meant hard physical manual labor under the hot California sun. In spite of that, or maybe because he spent so much time outside, Steinbeck ended up developing a deep appreciation for the California countryside, for its beauty, its promise, for everything it had to offer. He was a pretty smart guy. He went to Stanford University, but he decided that school wasn't really for him, and he ended up dropping out. His early adulthood took place, as you can see, during the Great Depression, which is one of the most, I guess, depressing periods of American history. And later on today, we're going to dig into exactly why that's the case. As far as what you need to know about Steinbeck's writing, Steinbeck was the kind of guy who liked to write realistic fiction. He wrote what he knew, and he wanted to bring different elements of his experience and his existence into life. So as a result, a lot of his stories are based in California. And he really liked nature, so he focuses on detailed descriptions of nature. At the same time, what he also really, really cares about is the working class outcast. Back then, a lot of people didn't really care about your average blue collar worker, your average person who worked in the fields. He was known for humanizing them and helping America better understand what does it mean to be a farmer? What does it mean to be someone who has to pick corn or pick cotton in the fields? What does it mean to have to be someone whose only ability to stay alive and to support their family is to work under the hot burning sun day after day after day? His writing, as you could guess, just from the connection to the Great Depression, his writing just focuses on the issues that just really were close to his heart. That would be poverty, that'd be homelessness, that'd be the way that itinerant workers, meaning workers who had no choice but to travel from place to place just looking for work, the way that those kinds of workers were just exploited all the time and just disappointed every single step of the way. Back then, there was the concept of the American dream, which we'll talk more about, not today, but maybe later on. There was this American dream, this promise of a better life that you could build for yourself if you worked hard enough. And Steinbeck just lived that reality of having all these dreams, having all these hopes that you're being told that you can have, and just having none of them come true just because that's the way the world decides to work. And so he's a man of the people. He is someone who knows exactly what it means to suffer and who wants to write about it so that people across the country and people across time and generations can understand what it means to be a farm worker in the 1920s and the 1930s. Yeah. All right.
It's a mighty hard road that my poor hand has hold. My poor feet has traveled a hot, dusty road. Out of your dust bowl and westward we rolled, and your desert was hot, and your mountains was cold. I worked in your orchards of peaches and prunes, slept on the ground in the light of your moon. On the edge of your city you've seen us, and then we come with the dust and we go with the wind. California and Arizona, I make all your crops, and it's north up to Oregon to gather your hops. Dig the beets from your ground, cut the grapes from your vine, to set on your table your light sparkling wine. Green pastures of plenty from dry desert ground, from that grand coulee dam where the water runs down. Every state in this union us migrants have been. We work in this fight and we'll fight till we win. Well, it's always we ramble that river and I, all along your green valley I'll work till I die. My land I'll defend with my life if it be, 'cause my pastures of plenty must always be free.
Yeah, and we're going to continue from where we left off. All right. So they mentioned the Dust Bowl being a part of the Great Depression, and we're going to take a closer look at exactly what that looks like. So don't worry about this slide. I'm just going to have an article prepared for you that's going to go more in depth, and it's going to be right here. All right. So, migrant workers of California. In addition to the economic hardship felt by the impact of the stock market crash, another important event contributed to the devastation of the Great Depression, an event known as the Dust Bowl. The Dust Bowl got its name from the dust storm stirred from the topsoil following an immense drought across the United States. The areas hit hardest by the drought, Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and parts of Colorado and Texas, were devastated, as farms and crops and ultimately farmers' livelihoods were totally destroyed. Because so many farmers lost everything they had, they decided to try to find a better place to live. Many farmers decided to head west to California, Oregon, and Washington. During the 1920s, California became a tropical oasis, as it was heralded as an agricultural mecca. California had once touted itself as a state with the perfect climate for agriculture, with plenty of jobs in the industry. Thousands of those forced out by the Dust Bowl flocked to California, and the state became overwhelmed with people looking to restart their lives. These people were not only farmers, but others such as retailers and those whose income relied on farm communities. Such people became known as migrant workers, since they would travel from place to place looking for jobs. There was work available for some, and many were able to start over in California. However, there were not enough jobs for everyone, and many people found themselves jobless and homeless. Since so many migrant workers found themselves without work, they traveled wherever they could to find a job, often riding trains illegally, traveling from camp to camp with other homeless migrant workers. These camps became known as squatter camps, shack towns, or Hoovervilles, named after President Herbert Hoover, who many disgruntled Americans blamed for the problems leading up to the Depression. These temporary camps were usually set up by rivers or streams and provided little shelter, usually a tent or shack. There were no toilets or showers, and the little food they had was cooked over an open campfire. According to a report of the National Labor Board in 1934, we found filth, squalor, an entire absence of sanitation, and a crowding of human beings into totally inadequate tents or crude structures built of boards, weeds, and anything that was found at hand to give a pitiful semblance of a home at its worst. Words cannot describe some of the conditions we saw. During the warm weather, when the temperature rises considerably above 100 degrees, the flies and insects become a pest. The children are fretful. The attitude of some of the parents can be imagined, and innumerable inconveniences add to the general discomfort. In this environment, there is bred a social sullenness that is to be deplored, but which can be understood by those who have viewed the scenes that violate all the recognized standards of living. Some farmers attempted to help more permanent workers by allowing them to live on the land on which they worked. Government agencies also tried to help the situation by setting up camps run by the people living there. Facilities such as toilets, showers, and washing machines were available at these camps. Relief in the form of money often less than $40 per month per family, and food was made available to those who had been in California more than 3 years. But those who had been in California less than 3 years were left helpless. Still, those who received aid had to wait in long lines, and since there were so many who needed help, many were turned away once food rations were gone. When workers were able to work, the competition was fierce and the conditions were poor. A report from Alameda County in 1936 described these circumstances. At one ranch, 150 to 200 persons, Mexicans, Americans, high school boys, some families, reported at 6:30 in the morning, waited under the trees for call. Some waited all day and were not called at all. Others would work 2 hours and then check out, waiting until another truck was available, which again brings up the question of duration of employment. 25 cents an hour is the scale, yet a person may only work 4 hours out of the 12, but they must spend the rest of the time waiting in the hot sun or under the trees, subject to call of the foreman. It is certainly an unsatisfactory situation. Hope eventually came in the form of the New Deal and the creation of the Works Progress Administration, which provided thousands of jobs across the country. The program put many to work building government buildings, transportation systems, and projects, including those in the arts, media, and literacy. So you have the promise that it does get better, at least for some people. But to give you a quick picture, a literal picture of exactly how life was like for a lot of these people who struggled to just find work back then, this is one of the most famous paintings in human history, Migrant Mother, and it's a picture that shows a 32-year-old mother just trying to survive from day to day. You can see the worry in her face. You can see how prematurely lined and wrinkled she is just from the stress of the existence that they have. And you can see that she has her two children just burying their heads into her shoulder. These are not happy times. All right. To continue, there are a few quotes, just a few teasers from Of Mice and Men that I'm going to draw your attention to. First one, guys like us that work on ranches are the loneliest guys in the world. They got no family. They don't belong no place. They come to a ranch and work up a steak, and then they go into town and blow their steak. And the first thing you know, they're pounding their tail on some other ranch. They ain't got nothing to look ahead to. With us, it ain't like that. We got a future. We got somebody to talk to that gives a damn about us. We don't have to sit in no barroom blowing in our jack just because we got no place else to go. If them other guys gets in jail, they can rot for all anybody gives a damn. But not us. Lenny broke in. But not us. And why? Because I got you to look after me, and you got me to look after you, and that's why. He laughed delightedly. Go on now, George. This is from closer toward the end of the book. No spoilers at this point. All right. So to further preview the novel, the novella to be exact, because it's a shorter book, so it should be called the novella. Important ideas in the novella. These are going to be some of the key topics that come up. There's the importance of friendship. You kind of see that in the previous two quotes. The idea that having someone to look forward to life with, someone that you can suffer with together, makes things a little bit more okay. Struggles of loneliness. A lot of us can probably relate to this more than we care to admit. These are lonely times in a lot of ways. And part of the reason why I chose this story is because I felt like that idea of loneliness and isolation was something that people could relate to and understand a little bit more deeply. There's also the worth and purpose of an individual life. What exactly is one person capable of? How exactly can one person or one decision make a significant difference in everything that happens? As you've seen from the talk about the Great Depression, there is a power struggle between the rich and the poor. Even though a lot of us live civilized lives, that's something that has not changed. There is still a clear divide, a clear separation between those who are rich and those who are not. Fifth, the importance of independence. I'm sure nobody who's listening to this video or recording this video wants to feel like they're going to be told what to do all the time for the rest of their lives. It's fine for part of your life, especially when you're still trying to figure things out, but at some point, all of us have at least thought about breaking free, carving out our own path, carving out our own destiny. And that's going to be part of what this story is about. Last, the disillusionment of the American dream. To quickly sum that up, the American dream is that idea that anybody can be anything they want to be or achieve anything they want with their life as long as they work hard enough. A lot of people during the Great Depression are disillusioned, which means that they sort of have their eyes opened in a negative way to the reality of what's possible and what's not possible. A lot of people realize that the American dream is not going to come true and might not ever come true for a lot of them. Okay, main characters. So we're just going to talk about George and Lenny now. There are a lot of other characters, but here are some key things that you should keep in mind about the two characters. George, one on the left, he's kind of smaller, but he's wiry, he's well built. He's kind of like a cross country runner where he's low key pretty strong. He's pretty tough, but he's just not someone who jumps off the page as someone who's really well built. He's frustrated with having to take care of his good friend Lenny, but at the same time, he's compassionate and loyal, even if he can come off as kind of rude and aggressive at times. Lenny, on the other hand, Lenny's kind of the opposite of George in a lot of ways. You can see that he's a lot bigger than him. He's really large, he's extremely strong to the point where it almost poses a danger for other people. And while George is kind of crafty, while George is crafty, smart, uses his head a lot, Lenny is not. He has an intellectual disability. He's kind of simple minded, and he has the temperament of a small child. Like he's very impulsive. He'll get angry or really sad really quickly, the way a small child will. He's not a bad guy. He just doesn't have an easy time controlling his emotions. At the same time, Lenny is a real bro. He's fiercely loyal. And at the same time, he kind of depends on George just because George is the brains in the friendship. And Lenny is a little bit too simple minded to really be able to take care of himself the way a lot of adults can. All right. So that is pretty much it. This is the video that you're going to be taking notes on. And I'm going to stop the recording now.